Hey folks, welcome to another edition of Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS with Rachelle. Folks, 2019 is almost upon us. This year is quickly ending, and I hope your holiday season is going well. And folks, I just had to smile as I got this in the mail here recently. Got a special direct mail piece with some promotional offers from my gym. So the Planet Fitness, the Commerce Club was made me smile when I saw that. So I'm going to table this for a future marketing conversation in 2019. So stay tuned, folks. But last time, I talked about the importance of trends and staying on top of trends, monitoring trends, and recognizing what is going on, not only in your market, but just overall in the fitness industry, because threats are always out there. And so it's so important to recognize when things changes, program changes, all of that, they can impact your business. I don't care what part of the country you're in. And so here's an example that appeared in the December 11th edition of Athletic Business. Andy Berg wrote an article entitled United Healthcare Nixes Silver Sneakers Benefit. So it says, seniors in a number of states who have AARP's Medicare Advantage and supplement plans are out of luck if they were thinking of joining the popular Silver Sneakers fitness program. According to the Winston-Salem Journal, that's in North Carolina by the way, AARP's plans offered through United Healthcare will discontinue the benefits in 11 states for Medicare Advantage members and 9 states for Medicare supplement members. Overall, about 1.2 million Medicaid Advantage customers and 1.3 million Medicare supplement customers are being affected. The popular Silver Sneakers program provides free group fitness classes tailored to seniors. It also offers participants access to over 15,000 gym sites across the country. So that's an example, knowing your market, what's going on. So a lot of facilities, what they say, 15,000. So a lot of facilities across the country are going to be dealing with seniors here in the next few weeks, coming in, canceling memberships, having questions about all of that. So that's an example of perhaps an opportunity that can be neutralized to say, okay, well, this program is ending. There's going to be changes to this particular program. Can we create our own senior discount program to retain those members and keep them from going somewhere else? But this time, folks, just wanted to quickly share that with you as you engage in your strategic planning for 2019 and beyond. But folks, as promised, moving on to the sales advantage here, part 2. And I want to kick this episode off. I'm going to give you some different sales, some examples of different sales approaches here. But wanted to ask you, what is your sales strategy? Do you have a sales strategy? Because marketing is so important. Yes, marketing in terms of generating awareness of your facility, of your training, product, services, whatever the case may be. That is all so important. Marketing is just fundamental to your success. But so is the sales piece. And so yes, someone may get something in the mail, someone may click on an ad, but then if they have questions, they may pick up the phone and say, I saw this ad on Google. Can you give me some more information on your facility? Bam, the sales process starts right then. Someone comes in the door. If you engage in mobile marketing, which is actually becoming more and more prevalent in the fitness industry, all right, so they get a text telling them about your membership special, whatever, and then they're texting you with questions. That is all. Someone walks into the club. Those are all manifestations of how the sales process, different channels in which the sales process and the sales conversations can occur. So it is so important to be effective in that arena. So you got to know. And there's a couple of different things that you can do. So training and development. So you can work with your people, you can train your people, you can have these sales conversations, either with somebody with a sales trainer, have some formal sales training, but there's plenty of free resources online. You can partake in those and having these conversations to help your folks to become better. And you may say, well, Rachelle, I'm not a big box chain. I'm not one of these corporate chains that has account managers. That doesn't matter. Anyone that's handling sales for you, there's different things that you can do. You can, for Christmas, perhaps, buy them all a book, on some aspects of sales or whatever the case may be. But also, secondly, another way that you can do, and you can work on this process and improving your overall sales game at your facility or facilities, is hiring experienced people in terms of salespeople. So this could be people that have sold in sales, people that have had customer sales, service roles, that combined with sales. That's another way where you're just bringing somebody in that has experience already, and wonderfully so if they've already got experience in the fitness industry doing that. That is so important, but that's a way to shorten the learning curve and to help to generate, results and just positive results, going, in that direction, getting things going in the right direction. So those are 2 different ways and 2 different approaches. You can invest in your people and help them become better, or you can hire people, and certainly once you hire people with experience, you also can continue in terms of training and developing those folks. So it's so important. But when you think about your sales strategy, bringing out the old nifty SWOT analysis yet again, folks. So bringing this back again, but it's so important as you're crafting your sales strategies, you're thinking about this, is the SWOT analysis of being strengths, weaknesses. So these are internal, your facility, and actually it can go different levels. You know, your franchise chain, what are some of the strengths, some of the weaknesses? What are the strengths and weaknesses of your particular club? What are the strengths and weaknesses of your franchise group, or whatever the case may be, of your corporate chain, your strengths and weaknesses, but also externally, what are the opportunities and threats that exist in the marketplace? Okay, the opportunities could be, again, if a competitor, say a competitive gym is very big on the silver sneakers program, and they've been just hyping that up for the last few years, and now you hear that this program, they're getting ready to have some issues with folks losing that fitness benefit, and there's going to be some changes and some rebranding of other programs that are similar. That could be an opportunity for perhaps even a private gym or something like that that offer senior discounts or discounted senior memberships. That's an opportunity for those folks, but it's a threat. You know, that change right there is a threat for those facilities that are engaged in that silver sneakers program. And so just wanted to point that out. But you got to know your strengths and weaknesses. So these can come, and I feel like I've said this a gazillion times this year, but looking at your reviews, asking your members, you know, why, you know, what do you like about us? What are some areas in which we can improve? And so these are two areas that are golden in terms of developing your sales strategy, and particularly if you're selling against the competition. We're going to talk a little bit more about Crunch Fitness and how they do a fantastic job of selling against their competitors, but this is where you need to live. All right, this is where you need to live. Your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats as you are developing not only your overall business strategy, but definitely your sales strategies. But I wanted to quickly move on here into some practical examples of different sales approaches, and I'm going to highlight what I think about is good about each one. I've actually got a ton of them, but I had to cut some out in the interest of time. I want to start out with Anytime Fitness. Now, Anytime Fitness was a pet project of mine, a pet research project where just only on my own accord wanted to learn why. 2015, 2016, Entrepreneur Magazine, #1 global brand was Anytime Fitness across all industries and categories, extremely successful, more than 4,000 clubs, and they started franchising in 2002. So a lot of great results, very, very successful. So study that model. I know a number of franchisees and have interviewed a couple of franchisees on Fitness Friday here in the last couple of years. But I wanted to start off with some practical examples, first of which Jennifer Lawrence, who is the owner, trainer, and manager of Anytime Fitness in Bald Lake. And when I think back to the very first time I walked in, and I do this for a hobby. Yes, I'm passionate, I work out, do my own workouts, but I like to tour different clubs in different cities and different areas, particularly if there are major competitors down the street. I love that competitive interaction to say, how is this person or how is this facility selling against their competition? I love that. There's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that you don't know about, lessons and case studies that I develop, not just for the fitness industry, but for other industries to help other folks, you know, in leadership roles and leadership development. Great lessons. But Jennifer Lawrence, in 2016, I popped on into her facility, and she has an award-winning facility, and her people love her, and they nominated her, and she won that customer service award. But when I had my sales interaction with her, and she's giving me the tour, and we're talking, a clear standout advantage of hers is that, #1, she has a degree from Central Michigan University in health and wellness promotion. So as a little girl, and the very first time I interviewed her, I've interviewed her twice on Fitness Fridays, once in 2016 and 17. The very first time I interviewed her, you'll recall her saying, for those of you who've watched me long enough, she said, you know, when we would play dress up growing up, I was always the fitness instructor. So she had a lifelong passion for fitness, and it was readily apparent. Also in her sales conversation, it was wonderful, particularly coming from someone who was a franchisee, to hear her, just the integrity and the honesty and the sincerity in terms of with which she operates her club, and not all about trying to get memberships and not all about trying to get a buck. Because one thing I always do when I'm giving a tour, I ask about personal training, and I'll say something like, well, you know, is there someone I can speak to about personal training? Because I really need to lose some weight. And I love to see how that's handled. I love to see how that's responded to. What is a person going to say? I love it. And something that she said was, no, you don't. You don't need any personal training. You know, your body, I'm looking at your body composition. But she had been a trainer, or has been a trainer for almost 20 years. So again, the integrity of that situation, and that's why I interviewed her twice, is a positive. She's one of my leadership best practices in that regard, of someone with integrity that is not trying to get a buck, that just wants to do the right thing, and her members know that, and that's why they nominated her for that award. She does group fitness classes during the summertime when the weather's nice. She goes out to the park and takes her members. They can meet her out at the park and do classes, but really goes above and beyond for her members. But she's a great example. Another great example, I've highlighted him before a few months ago, RJ Still, who's the manager of the Anytime Fitness in Farmington Hills, Michigan. Does a fantastic job in 1 year's time frame. He took that club, was doing well anyway, but it is now a purple club. It is now an award-winning club. So one thing that he does in his sales interactions, went in, took a tour and all of this and that, love to do that. Love it. And so, but he talked about the online reviews, and he talked about how it was a purple club, and he had some of the positive feedback from members hanging on the wall of his office. So he was constantly pointing to and referring to those kudos and stuff from his own members. And so that was powerful, because I go back to what are your reviews saying? What are your members saying about you? What are folks saying? And he utilizes those in his sales conversations. Hey, don't take my word for it. Take a look at what my members are already saying, about me and about this facility. So that was another great example. Lastly, Sarah was at Anytime Fitness in Davison, Michigan, which is actually the nearest big city to that is Flint. I was there during the winter of 2017. And she did an excellent job. And this was a very unique situation in that her parents owned 3 or 4 different Anytime clubs in that general area. And won't get into it, don't have time to get into that, but the whole family-owned business can present a unique dynamic, not only in fitness but in any industry, family-owned businesses. And so, but her situation was unique in that, yes, her parents owned it, and yes, you could tell they were probably going to pass it down to her when they retired, but she was very passionate. She was working on her training certification. She had been to the AB show, which is the athletic business magazine show, the year before, and so she knows different trainers. She knows people at different clubs, and when I'm touring, I ask a lot of questions. She did a fantastic job. She knew her stuff. And so, and I think again, oftentimes the stereotype is, the person in the family-owned business, they don't, in many cases it's negative generalizations that people make. And I think she was a wonderful example of somebody who was passionate about her parents' business and would do well or will do well when they do pass it on down, pass those locations, those clubs on down to her. But it's just knowing your stuff, but also recognizing, my succession plan may be to leave this to my kids or allow this person to take over. But you got to ask yourself, particularly when it comes to fitness, does the person care? Do they be passionate about fitness? Do they really want to be in the fitness industry? Because if they don't, they are not going to, they're not going to perform, and it's just not going to be the same experience as if you had someone in your succession plan, for those of you who are franchisees. But this is true of any type of leadership. You want to have people in leadership roles in the fitness industry that are passionate, that look the part, that are serious, and this and that, and they will certainly have a lot more credibility. But she did a fantastic job, folks. Did a fantastic job. Owner's child, doing a great job running that particular club there in mid-Michigan. Next, Export Fitness in Chicago. Actually, you've heard me rave about the North Pulaski Road Planet Fitness location. At this location, actually, the second day I worked out at that Planet, I actually walked back to the Airbnb where I was staying, but this Export was literally probably a 2-minute walk. So I stopped in the Export. Can you give me some information? And going back to sales approaches, and this one is very common, where I walked in, there were 2 ladies at the front desk, and can I get some information? Is there anyone that can give me a tour? And so there was kind of this, kind of uncertainty, whatever this and that. But anyway, they went and found the assistant manager, Abel Alvarado. And so had an opportunity to speak with him, and he told me about the club, and he's a secret weapon. He's a secret weapon. It's always great to see managers and those in leadership roles in these sales conversation and interactions that know their stuff. He had a brother that was a member of Planet Fitness, and he used to work out with his brother at Planet all the time. So he was able to sell against that. He was able to sell against Planet in terms of knowing, because he had been worked out there so many times relative to what his gym offered, Export. And it was funny because when I walked in and I said, and I sat down and I said, what? I was a member of Powerhouse Gym in Novi-Michigan for 5 years. And I said, this reminds me of Powerhouse. And he said, it used to be Powerhouse. He said, it's the owners own, I don't know how many locations they owned of Export, but they used to be Powerhouse franchisees, and now they're Export. And he said, yeah, this used to be Powerhouse. Because I'm looking around and I'm checking the guy, one guy in the corner was over there. He was about 6'4", 6'5", had some bulging biceps. And I'm like, bam, woo, look at that brother over there. Woo, look at that. And so it kind of made me smile. But anyway, definitely a powerhouse type environment. But he did a fantastic job. He knew his stuff, the pricing. because I ask a lot of questions when I tour, and I've actually had a couple of people a couple of times. I'm like, are you from corporate? I think I made people nervous because I ask a lot of questions because I like to know, what is the square footage, and what is this, what about that, and so I'm asking these questions that people typically don't ask. But he knew his stuff. And in terms of sales strategy, again, someone that's right down the street, and you look at that Planet Pulaski Road, look at their online, look at some of their online Google reviews, and you'll see, okay, people are comparing it to export. You got members that have left that Planet and gone to export, and back and forth. You'll see that some of the export clubs, so you'll see that comparison happens all the time. But one thing from a sales strategy, when I think about what he did and how effective it was, is he came after my freedom. And you think about my value, how much I value freedom. Number one, Rachelle's values: freedom and change. I need those two in my life. They're very, very important. So he came after my freedom. And he said, look, at this club, I know where you are now. I didn't tell him that I live in Michigan, whatever, but he said, I know where you are now. And he came after my freedom, and he said, there's only 2 rules. No gym bags on the floor, and no fighting. That's it. And so he came after me on freedom, but he did a fantastic job. But I just think, again, when you have folks, particularly like the 2 young ladies that weren't comfortable with the process and they went and found him, that happens a lot more. That happens actually more often than not. When you have situations, particularly in your corporate chains, where you have folks that are sales managers, account managers, folks that are in that sales role, and that perhaps when I'm working out early, if I'm trying to get a tour at 7:30 and no one's there yet, and the person has to do that. Same thing happened when I toured Gold's Gym, which is very, very close to that Yukon, Oklahoma Planet Fitness that I went to when visiting my brother. Same thing happened. So we'll talk about that experience at Gold's Gym in Oklahoma on a future episode. But Abel did a great job. On that. And then Planet Fitness, moving on here, because you think about, again, going back to the 2018 club industry rankings, 2017 as well. Who are the 2 franchises? Yeah, you've got LA Fitness number 1, you've got Lifetime number 2, very sales-driven organizations. But who are the 2 franchises? What 2 franchises are there? All right, you got number 6, Planet Fitness, number 10, Crunch Fitness. We're going to talk more about Crunch here after I finish talking about Planet Fitness. So back to the October, when I was back in the Shreveport-Bossier area, Louisiana, visiting my parents again, and went on in to the soon-to-be newest location. I was in their pre-sale office, talking to Ryan Lowe, LAUX. And so he used to be the general manager of the first club on Burt Coons, the first Planet location in that area. And he had been promoted to district manager. So that market is growing, and their marketing is on fire, and just they're killing it from a marketing perspective. And so he's been with that group. He's been with the Planet for a long time in that area. And so we're going back to when I walked into that pre-sale office for the Erie Drive, the soon-to-be newest location, probably open, should be open by now. And so walked in and said, I want to get some information. When is this club opening? Because I really want my dad to join, and that's how I opened it up. And so then, he told me December 1st to the 7th, and this is what our plan is. And then he went on into a sales presentation, and I never turned down an opportunity to be sold to. But when I go back and think about, there's many different things that he did well in that conversation, but I would just argue that his tenure, with Planet and with the Kansas, Louisiana, Sutherland group, it really showed. It really showed just his loyalty, and he's happy, very positive. He was very balanced in his presentation, made sure to give me, terms and conditions, and talked about the, I call it the membership fee, but the annual fee. He disclosed all of that, but there was no pressure. You could just tell his approach, and having been with that group for so long, he's able to take more of a long-term perspective in terms of, memberships. He's not trying to, sell and just sell and get people to sign up. Come back in if you need any more information, or give us a call. These are our pre-sale hours. But I just think his knowledge, when I'm asking him, so what's going to be the square footage of that club? I remember back in the day, that was a Rite Aid. When he's telling me, and he said, have you ever been to the Burt Coons location? Because it's roughly the size of this when you compare it to this. And so he knew his stuff. And I just think in any pre-sale situation, because that is sales. Again, at the end of the day, it's all about sales in those situations. You want to have folks that know their stuff, and folks that are happy, and folks that are loyal, because if they're not, you're going to have people walking out of the door, and you're going to wonder why people aren't signing up, why your pre-sale isn't going well. So that is so important, something to keep in mind. And I want to close this episode out in terms of sales approaches by highlighting Crunch Fitness. I've talked about Crunch a lot this year, just highlighting them because you have to wonder, when you think about the end of the third quarter, 2018, highlighted this, last time, Planet Fitness at 1,646 locations, all right? And you compare that to the fourth quarter now of Crunch Fitness with 260 locations is what they're advertising. So, this location, this Crunch Fitness, this franchise based in New York, founded in 1989, is in the top 10 of club industry, fitness industry ranking. They're playing with the big guys. They're playing with the big boys. How is that possible when they have such a small number of facilities relative to the others? And so I would argue the sales advantage. They focus a great deal on the sales advantage. And I'll highlight that again. They've got the expectation that people are selling, and they've got, in terms of training and development, how I mentioned there's one way you can work with your people. They've got the training and development piece where they do deploy mystery shoppers in their clubs. And so, but yes, they have the phone call mystery shops and they have the written ones, but theirs that certainly separates them from the pack is the video mystery shops, where they've got mystery shoppers going in with covert equipment, video equipment that's filming everything, and video doesn't lie. So I would argue that's actually a strength in terms of the objectivity of what's being reported, because they're going to see everything that's going on, the folks at corporate in the training role. And that's why, again, this is not punitive type training if we want to catch people wrong, catch people make mistakes and fire them, yada, yada, yada. But it's more from a sales coaching, training and development. Is the person closing? What are they doing? Are they asking for the business? Are they being honest about pricing? Whatever the case may be, that's an area for them to help train and develop their folks. And so what you're saying and what we're saying from them in terms of growth and development is huge, huge. And so what we have here is a marketing piece. Now this is from our Metro Detroit area. So we've got, what they're advertising now is join for zero enrollment or peak membership and above. Bring in your current gym membership card and replace with a Crunch membership. So zero enrollment and first month free. And so when I think about that, when I say, okay, so letting you know they're going after their competitors, bring in your current gym membership card. All right. And so when I saw that, I thought to myself, from a marketing standpoint, also from a sales execution standpoint, that is strong. That is excellent. Because that franchise in particular, they're real strong at selling against their competitors. So when someone comes in with a key card from another club, their people are going to be all over it. And they know how to sell against that. And I'm going to give you some examples, but that's just one of the latest promotional offers. There's two things at the Crunch franchise, and then I've studied them. That was another pet project that I do. Studied Orange Theory Fitness in 2016, 2017. Studied Anytime 2015, 2016. I'm actually studying Crunch Fitness, just overall as a pet project. For 2017, 2018 through 2019. We'll be studying Blink at the end of 2019 and 2020 when they come to town. But like to study these folks that are like, why are they so successful? Number one, they pioneered in 1989. They pioneered the no judgments philosophy. Number two, they also pioneered promotions, sales promotions. They're very aggressive when it comes to sales promotions. And because it's decentralized, as I pointed out on the first Sales Advantage episodes, because their efforts are decentralized, it is so important. It is so important because their franchisees are able to quickly react to competitive threats. So if X gym down the street start running some aggressive promotional offer, they are able to quickly, a strength of that franchise, from a franchisee's perspective, they are to quickly match and react or beat whatever the offer, whatever the case may be. And I've seen that in our Metro Detroit market. They are very aggressive, and then it's just the strength of the franchise chain itself is they're very aggressive when it comes to promotions. Very, very aggressive. So, this franchisee, Adam, I've talked about him in the past, but he raffled off a Harley, and so it's just different things like that. They have the freedom to create their own promotions and develop aggressive promotions, but they pioneered that. When you study the franchise, you recognize that they pioneered that. And so I want to quickly give you some pre-sale numbers. We talk about the sales advantage, we talk about how successful they are, but they also have the expectation that their people are going to do well, that their facilities and franchisees are going to do well. So PR Newswire. So we got 3 different locations here of Crunch Fitness here with openings in 2018. And so these figures are from the very first day of pre-sale of these locations. So number 1, Killeen, Texas, actually Fort Hood. My brother was stationed there, been there a couple times. July 2018. First day of pre-sale, had 1,200 plus new memberships sign up in 24 hours. All right, and unfortunately, PR Newswire just said 1,200 plus. I wanted to get the exact number, but that was the best that they had. Number 2, so that was record setting. But then they got shortly after that, they were beaten by Tuscaloosa, Alabama Crunch pre-sale, which is home of University of Alabama, for those who don't know. First day of pre-sale, 1,536 membership signups, 24 hours. All right, then they held the record for a short time until October 2018. Then Riverview, Florida, highlighted that example a few weeks ago. This location is near Tampa. Very first day of pre-sale, 2,915 new member signups, 24 hours. So I think that goes back also to the expectation. So regardless of what you're talking about, when you see that level of success, so these folks, these franchisees that are experiencing that level of 24-hour first day of pre-sale new member sign-up success, okay, they're setting the new standards for what is expected now. All right, and what success looks like for that franchise. You know, you yourself, what type of expectations do you have for your pre-sale? You know, for your first quarter of 2019, what expectations do you have? Are they, okay, well, I'm cool if 5 people sign up on pre-sale? Or do you need to have 50 people sign up for your very first day to be effective? You know, so it all goes back to your financials. It all goes back to what you're trying to do. And so, but just recognize expectations. We always, whether consciously or subconsciously, we live up to our expectations. So I think a lot of times, you know, if someone has low expectations for something, they're willing to accept, you know, just low performance. But that doesn't have to be you. You can see what Crunch is doing. You can see what the expectation of what success looks like. And you can see now, again, with 260 clubs, and they're on this aggressive national expansion here for the next few years, you will continue to see that type of growth. Because when it happens, regardless of what industry it is, then other people feel like, oh my gosh, now I got to beat that, or I got to come close to that, or I got to do better than having 25 people sign up on the very first day. So I want to give you 3 different examples here of Crunch folks here in the Metro Detroit area. So we've got 3 clubs forthcoming in the future. The 5-year plan, which I actually learned during a sales conversation at one of the clubs and during the grand opening of the Farmington Hills location in the spring. One of the folks actually told me, you know, regional, there was the time, I had a person tell me that 28 clubs was their 5-year plan for the future. But at that particular grand opening, I had an opportunity to talk to Danny. Danny was a training director, had 30 years, he was a 30-year veteran of the fitness industry, looked like a former bodybuilder, but did a fantastic job. So, you know, I was talking to someone else, and I said, well, you know, is there someone I can talk to about personal training? Because I really need to lose some weight. Because I love that. I love doing that. But anyway, I was talking to Danny, but again, going back to the strength of their sales process and their sales strategy of selling against the competition, but also recognizing in the industry, from a training perspective, you have a lot of facilities that utilize trainers that are independent contractors. And so that can be a problem. That can be it's a weakness actually of many facilities, because you have no shows, you have no accountability, you have just all kind of stuff going on. You know, there's no policies and procedures for them to follow. Their heart is not in it 1,000% in some cases. But what did he do? He said, well, you know, at Crunch, our trainers are employed exclusively at Crunch. So the no-shows, all of this other nonsense that happens at other clubs will not be happening at my clubs amongst my training staff, all right, or they won't be here long. So I go back to Danny and how, again, he was utilizing that the strength of our trainers work for us. So none of this independent contractor nonsense that happens. Our folks are credentials, and they have all of that. So that was what he was highlighting. So that was an example. But also having someone with 30 years of experience. So he came in the door having that industry and that fitness knowledge of knowing some of the pitfalls that happen in the industry. Number 2, employee X. I'm going to preserve this person's anonymity. I always have a hard time saying that word. I want to keep that person anonymous. Employee X. I was having a conversation with this Crunch employee here in the Metro Detroit area this summer, and this person actually said, well, you know, I don't know, you know, what gym are you a member of? And I said, well, you know, I'm a member of Planet. And so, you know, I don't tell them I'm a happy member of Planet, but yeah, I'm a member of Planet. And because then their sales approach is going to change. I want it to be natural. Yeah, I'm a member of Planet, so tell me about your gym. And so then they said, you know, and this person said, well, you know, I don't know which location like you've gone to or you're a member of, but, you know, their layout is not good. And I'm sitting there thinking their layout. And so when I heard that, you know, in the spirit of transparency, I thought, now this person has to be talking about the Northville, Michigan location. Now, talked about that my visit to that club this summer. Wonderful staff, hardworking staff. But the facility itself, definitely, I mean, the layout needs some help. So I thought this person was talking about that location, but no, this person was actually talking about the Ford Road location in Dearborn, Michigan. And I was like, Ford Road, really? And at this point, I had not been to that club. Moreover, in the spirit of honesty and transparency, I used to live in Dearborn. All right, so I had folks that have told me, in recent times since I becoming a member of Planet, don't go to that club. They use the lunk alarm. That thing is annoying, and yet whatever. So then I also looked at the reviews, and I'm like, well, yeah, I do see that, and I do see whatever. So I actually, in the spirit of transparency, I was like, no, can't do that club. It's too much of a risk, whatever. And so I'd always exclusively gone to the Michigan Avenue location. That's why you'll recall early on during my PF Adventures, it was always that same club. But because that person made that comment, I said, you know what, no, I got it. That challenged me indirectly. I got to go in there and I got to see, like, hold on, like I know that club, I'd been in there to use the restroom, but I hadn't worked out, I hadn't paid attention to all of that. But anyway, so essentially that was the person, what the person was selling against the layout relative to their layout. Now the only concession I could give is, okay, now the safety zones around the treadmills at Crunch, are a little stronger, but as far as the spacing of everything else, it was the spacing is great. I'm in that location of Planet. And I'm so glad, actually, I heard that comment in a bizarre kind of way because that challenged me to go to that club, and I really like that club, and I can watch Channel 13 at that club, unlike the other ones, except for Bloomfield Hills. Now that station is available. So really, really like that club. But that's an example of someone selling against another club, a competitor right down the street, right down, what, about a mile difference? Right down the street, selling against a competitor. So I had been on enough PF Adventures, I had known the layouts and how things, whatever this and that. But if someone was brand new and didn't know and hadn't been to that Planet in Dearborn on Ford Road, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know. So that's so important. That's so important to be aware of what your competitors are saying about you. We're going to talk more about that at the end when I talk about exposure. And then lastly, Adam, folks. Adam. I've talked about him. Yes, his leadership. Yes, he has ownership. But he does an excellent job in terms of accountability and being obsessed with feedback, valuing feedback. He's the owner of the clubs here in Metro Detroit, Crunch Clubs. His business cards are right there. As you're going in his clubs, he's got his cards there. And during the sales process, the folks will even tell you, our owner, he's very big on feedback. He wants to know if there's something you want, he wants to hear about it. He wants to see, he wants to research and investigate if it's something that he can bring to the club. He wants to know. You look at their online reviews, he's right there, Johnny on the spot. What's going on? And, he's responding to positive feedback and negative feedback. All right, so in my opinion, yes, he's particularly from applying to online reviews, yes, that's marketing and all of this and that. But I would also, on a macro level, I would argue he has a sales. He is, by doing all of that, he is selling his clubs. He is selling his clubs. When you have an owner like that is that involved and is on feedback like Johnny on the spot, that is that responsive, it is so important. It is so important, but I would argue he's selling his clubs. I read it a couple times ago, a couple Fitness Fridays ago. The young lady in the Dearborn location of Crunch was complaining about feeling judged and felt like this and that. I read that. I won't read that review again, but he responded and said we don't want people to feel judged here. And what was he doing? Reinforcing, okay? Crunch Fitness pioneered the no judgments philosophy. So by virtue of his response, by virtue of all that he's doing in terms of that feedback loop that he is so on top of, as a professional poker player, on top of feedback. What are people saying? There's no guessing what cards are people holding. Many times they're laying the cards out on the table for you. Okay, in terms of feedback, how you're performing, how they feel. All right, so his response to that is huge. So he's a big one. Lastly, cannot forget Matt at the Westland Crunch Fitness. He actually came. This was in March of 2018. He actually came at me with stretching zones. These are Crunch stretching zones. I saw those and I thought to myself, because Crunch locations are standardized, meaning they've got their stretching zones. There's not the level, particularly in a franchise situation, regardless of chain. You'll see a lot of inconsistency in terms of stretching areas. Some are real small, some are real nice, some are real small, whatever this. You won't see the inconsistency. It's very consistent. So he came at me with that. But then he said those dreaded words to me, took me to a group fitness class and said, take a look at these mats. And I saw the mats and I said, oh, standardized stretching mats. I have to go to Brighton to be able to use those. At Brighton Planet Fitness to be able to use those. And he said those dreaded words, if there's not a class in here, you're welcome to come in here and use it as long as you want. And then I said, oh, man. And so for those of you who don't know, at Powerhouse, I'm a baton twirler. And so I actually used to twirl a baton on the basketball court at Powerhouse, as well as in some of the racquetball courts when they were free, or in the group exercise classes. So that just kind of brought back nostalgia. But he was incredibly powerful, and I'm actually going to do a whole episode in 2019 on stretching areas. We're going to talk more about that. That's something that I haven't done a formal episode on. We're going to talk more about that, and how particularly that can be a huge competitive advantage of you, but you got to know what other stretching areas look like to be able, for comparison purposes, and what's going on and what's happening. Because I can tell you emphatically, I mean, that particularly in March of 2018, I hadn't been on a lot of Rachelle's PF Adventures or Planet Fitness Adventures, particularly those out of state, like Yukon, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Evansville, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, to see those stretching areas, those real strong stretching areas. So I didn't know that. So if this was in Westland, which is about 20 miles each way from my house. So that was my saving grace. If that would have happened, if that sales conversation and interactive would have happened at the Farmington Hills newer location of Crunch Fitness, folks, I would have 2 gym memberships right now. I mean, at that point, I was extremely vulnerable when it came to stretching areas. But I do my standing stretch by the selectorized weight machine, the shoulder press. That's my machine. You'll see me standing up before I head to the showers. It works. I do more stretching actually at night at home. And so, I'm making it work. But at that time, I was very, very vulnerable in terms of stretching areas. But going to do a whole episode on that, on stretching areas and the value of that, particularly around franchise. Now, your corporate, your Lifetime Fitness, your Lifetime Fitness, your LA Fitness, those type of, your corporate chains, they've got, the stretching areas are on lockdown. All right, but that's because they've got folks at corporate that are, mandating certain layouts, and it has to have this, it has to have that. But there's a reason why they do that. And there's a reason why those clubs are so successful. You want to have A to Z fitness in terms of stretching, workout, and also the ability to stretch again at the end. But we'll talk more about that next year. But if that would have happened to me at the at the Crunch Fitness, closer to my house, I would have joined. Yeah, and you talk about Rachelle, who's a sales trainer, and Rachelle has worked in sales. It takes a lot to sell me. And so I always want to give Matt a shout out, because he did a fantastic job that day of talking to me and then talking about the benefits, but particularly the stretching area. But so you got to recognize, for those of you, regardless of what type of facility you have, depending on who your competition is, they could be selling against some weaknesses that you have, some perceived weaknesses, whatever the case may be, some actual weaknesses. So you got to know that. You got to know what folks are saying. And so I want to close this episode out by talking about the gift of exposure. I'm going to do a whole series on Non-Fitness Friday in 2019, early on, about the gift of exposure. And so that's why I want to leave you with this challenge of saying, I could probably ask you to tell me about your gym or your facility, whatever the case may be. You can go on and on telling me about it. But if I ask you about your competition, and I've done this a lot of times with a lot of different people, and particularly those that are franchisees, they don't know, have a clue what their competition is doing. They don't know. The only thing they know is what they know, and then their own facility, their own people, whatever. And so I want to challenge you to expose yourself in 2019. Get out there, get in your market, learn what's going on. Okay, employee X at Crunch Fitness, who was telling me about the Dearborn Planet location on Ford Road. That person had been in the gym. Okay, so that person was selling, had been exposed to what was actually in there. And so I would argue in those situations, you got to know, regardless of what you're selling, that's sales 101, know your competition. What do they have to offer that you don't? What do you have to offer that they don't? How can you position yourself in it to be competitive effectively, all right, in your particular market? And when people come in, or when they call, or when they text you, when they email you, all right, but you got to be exposed. If all you know is your own facility, that's not enough. You got to increase your breadth and depth of knowledge of the industry overall, but definitely your market, but definitely your competitors and your market. What's going on? What's out there? And then there's something, and this was such a powerful lesson that was lost on me when it was happening when I was in grad school at Northwestern. And we would do these consulting projects, and companies would come into us or come into our professors and say, well, we want to partner with you guys, and we want to have your students do the consulting projects, and these are our problems. This is what, these are some of our key issues. Here's the data, and then they would give us the information. We all got the same information, regardless of what your group you were in. We all got the same information. And then we all had to present. We had to work on these plans for a certain amount of time. We had to present these plans to the client or folks from the sponsoring company. And so when we did our presentations, human nature, it's easy to just want to roll out and just, okay, well, I did my presentation, I'm out of here. No, those professors will sit your butts in those chairs and you listen to other group presentations. All right? And you kind of think back, looking back then, it's going to, I have this other stuff I have to do, whatever this and that, but no, it was a very important lesson we were learning. Actually, a couple of different lessons. Number one, you may walk out of here thinking that your project was the best thing since sliced bread, but if you're leaving before hearing anyone else's presentation, you have no basis of comparison. So that way we were able to sit there and listen to other group presentations, and sometimes you hear these ideas and these plans, and you think, wow, like what? Like this is just like, wow, why didn't I think of that? Or well, that was really good, whatever, this and that. All right, you got to have some basis for comparison, particularly in your market or markets in which you operate. You got to know. But also, number 2 lesson, humility. Just the humility to acknowledge to yourself and to other people, there are other good facilities. There are other good chains. There are other good franchises out there. There are other good corporate locations. But if you're not exposed, you don't know any of that. You don't know any of that. When I was in Louisiana as an undergrad, I thought my university was the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, it was. I had a wonderful experience, and I mean this with all due respect. But then I got to Florida, I'm in Miami for my first master's program, and I remember thinking, wow, this state has so much money. The university has so much money. They have scholarships. They have grants. I was able to fly to different professional conferences, and the Graduate Students Association paid for it. It was just fantastic. Because Louisiana's always struggled in the public, just in public education and funding, and they're always, not have enough money. It's just whatever, it's a struggle. Then I got to Florida with all this money and just all of these resources, and all of that was great. Then I got to Northwestern after that, and I'm thinking, wow, a small private college, university in Chicago with 8,000 students total, and they're sitting on a $10 billion endowment. There was really, money was no object. At Northwestern, and I was exposed to so much, and just so much. But I'm just using that as an example to say, in my own little world in Louisiana, that was all I knew from a university standpoint, all right, in terms of my experience. Then I got to Florida, I'm like, wow, I used to think Louisiana, was just the best thing since sliced bread. Then I get to Florida, and I'm like, wow. Then I get to Northwestern, but it's exposure. So expose yourselves, folks. In 2019 and beyond, I don't care what your role is, you got to know. If you're a fitness trainer, what other modalities exist out there? You can watch YouTube videos. You can go and you can, participate in classes at, YMCA, Orange Theory Fitness, Title Boxing Club. There's so many different options, but you gotta know what's out there. You gotta know what's out there. So please, folks, have the humility, have enough humility to expose yourself. Recognize, yes, your ego may be threatened when you recognize that, man, there's actually people out there that are as good as I am, or as good as mine, have facilities that are as good as mine, or even better than mine. Right? You got to be willing to be okay with that. But just know you can learn, you can grow, you can improve, but you will become a better fitness professional. And for those of you, particularly on the fitness side as members, you got to expose yourself. If you're not succeeding, if you're failing, if you've been failing for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, do something different. Try a different modality. Try a different place. Try a different type of fitness, whatever the case may be. Make a change if necessary, folks. And so that's all I have for you today. So I thank you so much for your time. And remember, I am positively passionate about your fitness.